On the night of my so-called retirement, I learned what betrayal looks like in a suit and tie. They said it was a surprise party. Balloons, champagne, the whole show. But no one retires by surprise. The banner read, "Thank you for 35 years of service, Ed." Except that morning, they'd already taken my name off the front gate. The new sign said, "Harper Innovations. No and son. No me." Ryan, my own son, stood there grinning, glass raised. "To my father," he said. "The man who built the dream we're carrying forward." Applause. Cameras flashing. Then Clara handed me a folder. "Just sign this, Ed. Your retirement benefits." I signed, because you don't question your children on stage. But that wasn't a retirement form. It was the deed that made my son the owner, and me, a guest, in the very place I built from my bones. Ryan leaned close, his smile gone. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Dad." I walked out into the rain as they toasted my name like it was a brand they'd conquered. The pocket watch Helen gave me ticked in my coat, slow and steady. Tick, tick, tick. Each beat whispering the same truth. They thought the signature ended the story. They had no idea what it started. Before I tell you what happened next, please help me reach 1,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. It's completely free for you. But it means everything to me. Thank you, truly, for your support. The rain didn't stop that night. It slid down my windshield in crooked streaks, blurring the glow of the workshop I used to call mine. The laughter from inside still echoed in my head, forced, nervous, like people clapping for a man they'd already buried. I sat in the truck a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the Harper and Son sign flicker in the stormlight. One bulb had gone out. The "and" fitting, I thought. It was no longer "and Son." It was just Harper, and not even my Harper anymore. When I finally drove home, the house creaked the way old bones do when they're tired of waiting. Helen's photo still sat on the mantel, her smile soft, knowing. I turned the pocket watch in my palm, the one she'd given me on our 20th anniversary. The engraving on the back was fading, but I could still make out the words, "Silence isn't surrender." She'd said that the year Ryan went off to college, when I thought distance would make him stronger. Maybe it just made him colder. The morning after the party, the town felt different. I walked to the cafe across from the docks, the same place I'd eaten breakfast for 30 years. Marlene, the waitress, gave me that look people give when they don't know if they should say congratulations or condolences. "Heard about the big night," she said, trying for cheerful. "They say the company's going digital now. Big things ahead." I smiled, but it felt like lying. "Yeah," I said, "big things." That was how betrayal always starts in small towns, quietly, behind polite smiles and good coffee. By the time you smell the smoke, your whole life's already burning. I didn't tell Marlene about the document, about how Clara had slid it across the table 2 days before the party, all charm and precision, saying it was just a retirement benefits form. How Ryan had nodded, pretending to check his phone, pretending not to hear the tremor in my voice when I said, "You sure this is just paperwork?" He'd said, "Of course, Dad. You've earned your rest." Rest. That word still itched under my skin. It sounded like they were putting me down like an old dog. Back at home, I brewed coffee the way Helen used to. Strong, a spoonful of sugar, nothing fancy. The smell filled the kitchen, and for a second I almost forgot the emptiness. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy. I sat at the table, tracing the wood grain with my thumb. Every groove told a story. Birthdays, repairs, the time Ryan carved his initials and blamed the cat. I could still see the faint outline of those letters under the varnish. RH, he'd carved himself into everything I built. I turned on the radio to drown out my thoughts, but even the music felt foreign now. New songs about moving on, about leaving small towns behind. I wondered when leaving became a badge of honor. For my generation, Staying was what made you strong. For theirs, it was what made you invisible. By afternoon, I drove back to the workshop. Not to confront anyone, just to see it one last time. The gate was locked, which was new. A fresh keypad hung where the old latch used to be. Through the slats, I could see the new sign already going up. Harper Innovations. No woodworks, no smell of pine. Just sterile metal and a slogan that didn't mean anything. I didn't notice Sam until he called my name. He was standing by the loading bay, hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders hunched against the wind. He looked nervous. "Mr. Harper," he said, "they told us you'd retired. But something doesn't feel right." He was the only one who'd stayed loyal, the only one who still called me Mr. Harper. "They said it was your decision," he continued, "that you wanted out." I met his eyes. "That's what they told everyone, huh?" He nodded. "Ryan changed the locks yesterday. Clara's been in your office since morning, talking to the accountant. They were shredding something." Shredding. The word hit like a splinter under my fingernail. I wanted to march in there, demand answers, flip every table in sight. But Helen's voice came back, steady, patient. Silence isn't surrender. So I turned to Sam and said, "You still have the spare key to my old desk?" He hesitated, then nodded. "It's in the storage room. Why?" "Because," I said quietly, "I think it's time I took back what's mine." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for retirement. I poured one glass, then another, watching the amber swirl like time itself. The pocket watch ticked beside it, steady, unbothered. Outside, the sea wind howled through the eaves. The house felt too big for one man, too full of echoes. I thought of Ryan as a boy, barefoot in the sawdust, building birdhouses with hands too small for the hammer. He used to say, "Someday I'll make this place bigger, Dad." And he had, just not for me. The phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. "Hope you got home safe last night. The party meant a lot to us. Don't worry about the shop. We've got it under control. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just control." That was the word that defined him now. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the drawer beneath the table and pulled out an old folder. Ownership papers, contracts, tax forms. The real documents, the ones that still had my name on them. And inside, taped to the back of one sheet, was something I hadn't thought about in years. The original trademark certificate for Harper & Son Woodworks. Helen had told me to keep it separate. "Some things," she said, "should never be signed away." She'd been right, and as the rain returned, drumming on the windows like quiet applause, I realized something. They'd taken my company, but they hadn't taken my silence, and that, sooner or later, was going to cost them everything. 2 days passed before I saw them again. Ryan showed up at my porch unannounced, crisp suit, perfect hair, holding a cardboard box like it was a peace offering. Inside were photos from the office, my old nameplate, and a wooden plaque that read, "Founder." I stared at it. The word felt foreign. Founder, as in past tense. "Thought you might want these," he said, trying to sound casual. "We're rebranding the office. Cleaner look, more modern." I nodded slowly. "You changed the locks." He hesitated. "It's just policy, Dad. Insurance reasons." Insurance, that word again. Always some corporate translation for betrayal. He glanced past me into the living room. "You've got to let go sometime," he added. "You've done enough." I could see it in his face. What he meant was, "You're no longer useful." I didn't invite him in. I just thanked him, though my mouth was dry when I said it. He left after a few more hollow words, but I stood there long after the sound of his car faded, the box still in my hands. I set it down on the floor, opened it again, and found something I hadn't noticed before. A sealed envelope under the plaque, my name written in Clara's sharp handwriting. Inside was a letter on company letterhead. "Effective immediately, all public and promotional rights to Harper & Son Woodworks, including imagery and signature designs, will now be managed by Harper Innovations, LLC. This includes all workshop photographs, company history displays, and founders' statements. At the bottom, a note in pen. Thank you for your service, Edward. No signature, not even theirs. Just that cold line like a gravestone engraving. I folded the paper carefully, slid it back inside the envelope, and set it on the mantel beneath Helen's photo. I remember whispering, "You were right again, love. They didn't just want the company. They wanted to erase me." The next morning, Sam came by the house. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Mr. Harper," he said quietly, "Clara's been moving everything out of your office. Files, blueprints, even the old client ledgers." I frowned. "The ledgers?" He nodded. "She said they're outdated, but those were all hand-signed contracts from your biggest accounts." I grabbed my jacket. "Show me." We drove to the shop. The keypad beeped red when I tried the old code. Sam punched in the new one. He'd overheard it when Clara entered earlier. Inside, the air smelled like solvent and betrayal. My desk was stripped bare. The ledgers were gone, replaced by sleek white binders labeled Innovation Accounts. I stood in the middle of the room, remembering the smell of cedar and glue that used to cling to everything. Now it just smelled like polish and pretense. Ryan's handwriting was on the whiteboard. Flowcharts, investor notes, timelines for expansion. Words like automation and outsourcing replaced craftsmanship and heritage. Sam hovered near the door, uneasy. "I don't think they're planning to keep the workshop open," he said. I turned slowly. "What do you mean?" "They're converting it into a showroom. Everything's moving online. Manufacturing's being outsourced to Portland." That was the first time I felt something break inside. Not anger, not shock, just the quiet realization that they hadn't only taken my company, they'd hollowed out the meaning behind it. For Ryan, wood was just a product. For me, it was a legacy. When I got home that night, I couldn't eat. The clock ticked too loud. The silence had weight. I sat by the window, the folder of old documents spread before me. I looked at the trademark certificate again, Helen's handwriting at the corner where she'd written, "Keep safe." I'd nearly forgotten that beneath her signature, there was a line only she and I had agreed on, a special clause we'd filed when the company was first registered. It stated that no ownership transfer could be considered valid without the original certificate physically present. The copy in their office was digital. The real one, this one, was still here. I didn't smile. Not yet. Justice doesn't start with a grin. It starts with understanding where the cracks are forming. The following day, I drove down to the docks to clear my head. The sea was restless, gray like steel. Old fishermen nodded as I passed. Men who'd built their lives the same way I had, by hand, by sweat, by repetition. They didn't know yet that the man walking past them was a ghost. At the edge of the pier, I saw Ryan again, talking to a local banker. I recognized the man, Tom Rogers, the same banker who'd financed my first loan 35 years ago. They didn't see me, but I heard enough. "Once the rebrand's complete," Ryan said, "we'll be applying for a new line of credit in Harper Innovations' name. We'll use the founder's equity as collateral." Tom looked uncertain. "That requires his written consent." Ryan smiled, the same boyish smile that used to get him out of trouble. "We already have it. It's in the retirement packet." That's when I realized the truth. He hadn't just tricked me into signing ownership away. He'd tied my home equity to the company's new debts. If Harper Innovations failed, they'd take my house too. I remember gripping the railing so hard my knuckles went white. For a second I thought of marching straight to them. But then I heard Helen again, softer this time. Almost kind. "Not yet. Let them finish building their trap. Then you show them who laid the foundation." I drove home slowly, every mile heavier than the last. The sky broke open halfway down the coastal road, rain pouring so hard I could barely see. It felt like the ocean itself was trying to wash me clean. That night, I went to the workshop one last time after dark. Sam had left the side door unlatched for me. The machines stood silent, covered with dust cloths like shrouds. I walked to my old desk, ran my hand along the edge, and pressed under the back panel, where the false bottom still hid the secret compartment. Inside was the second key to everything. The original blueprint signed under my name and Helen's, with our claws intact. The sound of rain on the tin roof mixed with the faint ticking from the pocket watch in my coat. That rhythm, that quiet beat of time, became my reminder. They thought silence meant defeat, but for me it was a fuse. When I left, I locked the door myself and slipped the old key into my pocket. Not the new code, not their key, mine. The next morning, I drafted a letter, not to Ryan, not to Clara, but to the state office where trademarks are recorded. I didn't send it yet. Timing mattered. Silence had to breathe before it could speak, and as the sun rose over the misty docks, I finally whispered the truth out loud for the first time. They didn't just take my name, they stole my word. And that, I knew, was something no contract could erase. I stopped answering their calls. For a week straight, my phone buzzed with polite reminders from Ryan, voice messages that started with, "Hey, Dad," and ended with, "Don't make this difficult." The kind of tone people use when they've already decided what you are. An obstacle. I didn't delete the messages. I saved them. Every single one. When Clara texted, she kept it short. "We need your consent for a few filings." I didn't reply to that either. Silence, I'd learned, makes people nervous, especially the ones who mistake kindness for weakness. The mornings turned colder by mid-October. Mist rolled off the bay, crawling over the town like a secret everyone shared, but no one wanted to say out loud. I walked to the post office each day, not to send anything, but to ask quiet questions about document certifications, notarization, witness signatures, small pieces of knowledge gathered like nails for a project no one could yet see. On the fourth day, I met an old friend behind the counter, Martha Hill, a retired clerk who'd handled the original paperwork for Harper and Son. She squinted at me over her glasses. "Ed Harper, still keeping this town's lawyers busy?" I smiled, trying not to. She leaned closer. "I heard about what they did. Shameful business." I didn't confirm or deny it. I just asked her one thing. If someone transferred ownership of a trademark without the physical certificate, what happens? She frowned. "It's invalid until proven otherwise. Originals always trump copies." That was all I needed to hear. That afternoon, I returned home and spread every document across my kitchen table. The certificate, the founding agreement, even old letters Helen had written when we first started the business. Her cursive looped over the yellowed paper like a whisper from the past. I traced it with my finger and felt steadier than I had in weeks. I created 3 folders that day. Folder 1 held my proof, the original trademark, bank statements, letters of incorporation. Folder 2 was for everything Ryan and Clara had sent me, emails, contracts, the so-called retirement packet. Folder 3 was empty, labeled Justice. I didn't know what would go inside yet, but I would. The next evening, I called Sam. "Meet me after hours," I said. "Bring your camera." He sounded confused. "Camera? You'll see." The workshop at night felt like trespassing into my own life. Sam unlocked the side door, flashlight cutting through the dark. We walked to the main office, my old office. They'd remodeled everything. Glass desk, polished floor. Nothing of me left except the faint smell of cedar under the new paint. "Take pictures," I said. He hesitated. "Of what?" "Everything. The new layout, the branding, the equipment tags. Anything that has my logo on it." He obeyed without questions. The flash popped in the dark like small bolts of truth. When we finished, I opened one of the new binders on Clara's desk. Inside were business loan applications, stamped pending approval. My signature was printed at the bottom, digitally copied, not handwritten. Sam looked at me, eyes wide. "They forged you." I nodded slowly. "No, they replicated me. There's a difference. I slipped one of the pages into my jacket pocket. That would go in folder 3. We left quietly, locking the door behind us. Outside, the wind carried salt and rain off the ocean. I breathed deep, for the first time, not out of habit but intention. They think they own everything that carries my name. Let them think that. It would make the truth hit harder later. The following morning, I called Alan Graves, the attorney who'd helped Helen and me set up the business decades ago. He'd retired since, but his daughter Lydia now ran the firm. She agreed to meet that afternoon. The law office sat above a bakery downtown, the smell of bread mixing with printer toner. Lydia was sharp-eyed, maybe 35, and kind in the way people are when they've seen too much unfairness early in their careers. I told her everything, quietly, fact by fact, without the self-pity I'd carried for weeks. She listened, took notes, and when I was done, she leaned back. "You have something powerful, Mr. Harper. The original certificate means every transfer after it can be challenged. But I have to ask, what do you want out of this? Money? Control?" I shook my head. Neither. I just want the truth to stand where they've buried it. She smiled faintly. "That's rarer than you think." She offered to file an injunction immediately. I refused. "Not yet," I said. "I want them comfortable. Arrogance makes people sloppy." She nodded, understanding more than I'd said aloud. That night I returned home lighter. The wind had settled, the rain quieted. I made myself tea instead of whiskey. My hands didn't shake. The pocket watch ticked steady beside the mug. At 8:30 my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mr. Harper?" It was Tom Rogers, the banker I'd overheard on the pier. I wanted to confirm something. Ryan told me you were fully supportive of the expansion loan. I just need verbal confirmation for compliance." "Do you have my written consent on file?" I asked. "Yes, from the retirement packet you signed." I let a long pause hang in the air. "Tom," I said finally, "how well do you know the difference between an electronic signature and a wet ink one?" Silence. Then a nervous chuckle. "Well, legally speaking, they're equal, if the signer intended to authorize the document. And if they didn't?" The line stayed quiet long enough for me to hear him swallow. "Then it's fraud." "Good to know," I said softly, and ended the call. I didn't sleep much after that, but not because of worry, because planning kept me awake. Over the next week I visited the workshop twice more, each time after dark. I didn't take anything, didn't damage a thing, just observed. Ryan had installed security cameras, new ones. But I noticed something he didn't. The blind spot near the supply room, exactly where my old workbench stood. The same corner where Helen and I had hidden the backup drives years ago. When the shop first digitized records, I'd insisted on keeping mirrored copies of every invoice and contract on an external hard drive, just in case the cloud failed. Helen used to tease me for being paranoid. That hard drive was still there, behind a false panel in the wall, wrapped in plastic. I checked. It was intact. That became my second evidence token. The first was the trademark. The second, the hard drive. Each one a nail in the coffin of their narrative. Back home, I backed up everything onto a new flash drive, encrypted it, and stored it inside the pocket watch's presentation box. I taped a note under the lid. "If you're reading this, the truth is already out." Then I waited. Waiting is an art most people never master. But silence, that's where strategy lives. It's not about doing nothing, it's about doing quietly. A few days later, Clara finally cracked. She showed up at my house mid-morning, heels clicking on the porch like a countdown. I watched her from the window before opening the door. Her smile was the kind people wear when they've run out of options. "Edward," she said, "we need to talk." I stepped aside without a word. She hesitated, then walked in. "I know you're upset," she started, "but Ryan's under a lot of pressure. Investors are expecting progress. The last thing we need is a misunderstanding slowing us down." Misunderstanding, I repeated quietly. Yes. The paperwork. The transfers. Maybe there were errors. We can fix them, if we cooperate. Her tone was sweet poison. Did you forge my signature, Clara? She blinked, pretending offense. Excuse me. Because if you did, I said, keeping my voice calm, you didn't just commit fraud. You committed something worse. You underestimated me. She stood frozen for a second, then tried to smile again. You wouldn't go to lawyers, Ed. You're a reasonable man. I smiled back. That's what everyone thinks, until I stopped talking. She left soon after, anger barely hidden under her perfume. I closed the door and exhaled, long and steady. That conversation wasn't confrontation, it was confirmation. They were nervous now, and fear in greedy people always leads to mistakes. I returned to the kitchen table, opened folder 3 and placed 2 things inside: the forged contract and a printout of the bank's pending loan application. Then I closed the folder and whispered, "Not yet. Let them dig deeper." Outside, the tide was rising. The wind carried that faint metallic smell of change, the kind that warns you something big is about to break. And deep inside, I felt something I hadn't felt since Helen died. Clarity. Because silence wasn't my weakness anymore. It was my weapon. 2 weeks later, I saw my face in the newspaper. Right under the headline, Harper Innovations, the next generation of American craftsmanship. Ryan and Clara stood front and center, all smiles, shaking hands with the mayor. The caption read, Ryan Harper, visionary CEO, continuing his father's proud legacy. Proud legacy. They'd stolen the word and wrapped it in gold foil. The article quoted Ryan saying, "My father taught me that tradition and progress go hand in hand. This rebrand is our way of honoring him. Honoring me, by erasing me." I didn't feel rage this time, just that slow, clear burn of recognition, the way a craftsman knows when a cut has gone too deep. I folded the paper neatly and placed it in folder 3. Public deception had now joined the evidence list. That weekend, they hosted a launch event at the town hall. Invitations went to every business owner, local sponsor, even the press. Of course, I wasn't invited, but Sam was, and so by extension, so was I. He wore a hidden camera button I'd ordered online, a small, round lens disguised as a lapel pin. I taught him how to check its recording light twice before walking in. He nodded nervously, but I could tell he felt what I felt. The shift. We weren't just collecting facts anymore. We were collecting moments, the kind people can't lie their way out of later. The night of the event, I parked across the street from the town hall, in the shadow of the courthouse steps. Through the glass windows, I could see the glow of chandeliers, the shimmer of wine glasses. Ryan stood on stage, microphone in hand, charming as ever. "Tonight," he said, voice amplified through the speakers, "we celebrate a dream passed from one generation to the next." Applause. He gestured toward a giant banner behind him. "Innovation rooted in tradition." My logo sat at the bottom right corner, my handwriting, my carving mark, reproduced in digital polish. I felt my stomach twist, not from pain, but from a kind of grim satisfaction. Every lie they spoke was another nail they hammered into their own coffin. I didn't need to shout. They were doing the work for me. Sam stood near the buffet table, recording everything. I watched the live feed from my phone, heart steady, breath even. Clara took the mic next. "We're proud to continue Edward Harper's craftsmanship," she said, her voice smooth as varnish. "His values live through our brand, our vision, our products." Then she smiled that stage smile, the one that never reached her eyes, and added, "Of course, it's time to move beyond the past. Innovation means letting go of the old ways." Laughter, applause, and just like that, she unmasked herself without even realizing it. They revealed the new company logo mid-speech, a minimalist version, stripped of texture and warmth. No wood grain, no heritage, just sleek chrome letters. The crowd cheered. And when the lights dimmed for the presentation video, the screen displayed something that made my jaw tighten, old footage of me in the workshop, guiding Ryan's small hands over a block of cedar. My voice echoed through the speakers. "Every piece carries your name, son. Make sure you deserve it." The room erupted in sentimental awes, but I knew what I was watching. My own legacy repurposed as marketing content. Footage I'd filmed 30 years ago, now used without permission. I whispered to the air, "Thank you, Clara," because she'd just handed me my third and final evidence token. After the event, Sam brought me the recordings, video, audio, and a copy of the promotional file he'd downloaded from a USB drive in one of the computers at the venue. "You won't believe this," he said. "They're submitting this video to a National Business Award next week. Best Family Enterprise of the Year." I laughed quietly, not out of humor but clarity. "Good," I said. "Let them go national." That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, 3 objects in front of me. Helen's pocket watch, the trademark certificate, the flash drive labeled Harper Launch, Town Hall recording. Together they told a story. Memory, evidence, justice, the trinity of silence. The following morning, I went back to Lydia's law office. She reviewed everything carefully, eyes widening as she watched the footage. "They used your image, your words, your logo, all under a brand that legally doesn't exist yet," she said. "That's intellectual property theft on multiple fronts." I nodded. "I don't want to sue them. Not yet." She tilted her head. "Then what do you want to do?" "Expose them," I said, "but on my terms." She smiled slowly. "Then you'll need timing and witnesses. I already have both." A week later, Ryan called again, voice smooth, almost rehearsed. "Dad, we're being nominated for that business award I told you about," he said. "They're asking for a statement from you. Just a few lines about the legacy of Harper and Son." I waited a beat. "You want me to write about a company you don't own?" He laughed awkwardly. "Come on, Dad. It'll mean a lot for publicity. The judges love that family stuff." "Send me the draft," I said, keeping my tone neutral. He sighed with relief. "Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd come around." When the draft arrived, I read it slowly. It started, "My son has carried on our family tradition with unmatched dedication and innovation." I stopped there. Not because it was insulting, but because it was perfect. They'd written their own trap. I edited only one sentence. Right after that line, I added, "Even if that innovation came at the cost of integrity, honesty, and the truth about who truly owns our name." Then I signed it. Not with my name, but with my initials and the date, EH 1979-2023, the lifespan of my real company. I scanned it, attached it to the email, and hit Reply All. The recipient list included not just Ryan and Clara, but also the award committee and the local business journal. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and let the silence hum. By evening, the calls started. Ryan first, furious, panicked. "Dad, what the hell did you do?" "I told the truth," I said. "You made us look like criminals?" "You did that yourself," I said quietly, and hung up. Clara emailed next. Her message was short. "You've made a mistake you can't undo." I smiled at the screen. So have you. The story spread faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, the Business Journal ran a follow-up article titled, "Harper Legacy Dispute Casts Shadow Over Innovation Rebrand." The photo they used was of Ryan and Clara at the event, mid-smile. The kind of smile that looks fine until you realize it's been caught a second too long. The public started asking questions. Investors pulled out of meetings. Clients demanded proof of ownership. The same town that had applauded them was now whispering. And through it all, I stayed silent. Because the most dangerous thing a liar can face isn't noise. It's calm. Calm makes people confess. By the third day, Ryan showed up at my door again. He didn't knock, just stood in the rain like a man who'd finally realized storms can't be outsmarted. "Dad," he said, voice hoarse. "We need to talk." I stepped aside, let him in. He didn't sit. "You humiliated us," he said. "No," I said evenly. "You did that to yourself. I just turned on the lights." He wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. He left without another word, his shoes leaving muddy prints on my floor. I didn't clean them up. I wanted the reminder. When the door closed, I turned the pocket watch over in my hand and whispered, "Tick, tick." The sound of justice still keeping time. The morning after Ryan's visit, the sky broke open with a thin, steady rain. The kind that seeps through everything, not by force but by persistence. It fit the mood. The town felt quieter than usual, like it was waiting for someone to say what everyone already knew. At the cafe, whispers followed me to my seat. "Did you see the article? They said he owned the trademark. I heard the Sun forged something." Rumors have a strange way of being both cruel and accurate at once. I didn't correct anyone. I just stirred my coffee and watched the steam rise like old ghosts leaving the cup. That same morning, an envelope slid under my door. No stamp, no name, just wet paper, edges smudged. Inside was a letter from the Bank of Coastal Commerce. It was a notice of default. Harper Innovations had missed 2 payments on its expansion loan. I wasn't legally responsible for it, not yet. But the house was still listed as guarantor collateral. My collateral. I ran my thumb over the embossed logo on the letterhead, feeling that quiet old fire return. They'd gambled everything with my name still tied to it. I drove to Lydia's office without calling first. She read the notice twice, expression sharpening. "This is it," she said. "They used your property as collateral for a company they don't legally own. If we act now, we can file a fraud and injunction claim." I shook my head. "Not yet." She frowned. "Ed, if the bank moves first." "They won't. Not if I talk to the right person first." That right person was Tom Rogers, the banker who'd helped Ryan file those loans. I found him the same place I always do. Friday lunch at the yacht club. The kind of place where deals happen over shrimp cocktails and handshakes, not ethics. When I entered, he froze mid-bite. "Ed," he said, standing too quickly. "Listen, about that letter." I waved him down. "Sit, Tom. I'm not here to argue." He sat. His napkin shook slightly in his lap. "I just want to make sure," I said, "that when the bank repossesses Harper Innovations' assets, you know what belongs to them and what doesn't." He frowned. "Meaning?" I reached into my satchel and placed a single folder on the table. The trademark certificate, the founding agreement, and Lydia's preliminary legal notice. His eyes darted between them. "You filed an ownership dispute?" "Not yet," I said. "But I will, publicly on record, before the quarter ends." Tom exhaled. "Jesus, Ed. That'll ruin them." "No," I said, voice even. "They did that already. I'm just filing the paperwork." He nodded slowly, finally understanding the gravity of what he'd financed. "You want me to hold the foreclosure notice?" "For now," I said. "But when the news breaks, release it. Quietly. Let it find its own way to the press." He nodded again, the kind of nod that comes from guilt. "Consider it done." That night I drove back to the workshop one last time. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and clean. Through the windows I saw Ryan pacing inside, phone pressed to his ear, the way he used to when he was a boy trying to explain a bad grade before I saw the report card. Clara stood behind him, arms crossed, her smile gone for good. I didn't go in. I just watched. The empire they built on my silence already shaking from the foundation up. When I got home, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened Helen's sewing chest. Inside were small scraps of her handwriting, recipes, birthday notes, reminders. Beneath them, folded in a cloth napkin, was her last letter to me. "If you ever have to choose between noise and truth, pick truth." It carries further. I read it 3 times, then tucked it into folder 3. It deserved to be part of the record. The next day, the Coastal Business Network announced the finalists for Family Enterprise of the Year. Harper Innovations was among them. The ceremony would be live-streamed. Press, investors, judges, a perfect stage. I didn't need an invitation this time. Lydia arranged a representative appearance, listing me as the original founder for the record. "They can't legally bar you," she said. "You're the name on the trademark." The night of the ceremony, I wore my only suit. Navy wool, same one from Helen's funeral, same one from the company's first grand opening. I polished the pocket watch until it caught the light. Then I placed the flash drive inside the inner pocket, right above my heart. The ballroom was full of the kind of light that hurts your eyes. I walked in unnoticed at first. Ryan was on stage rehearsing his smile for the photographers. Clara stood near the judges' table talking too loudly about projections and legacy. When they finally saw me, her face stiffened, and his went pale. "Dad," Ryan said, forcing a grin. "Didn't expect you here." "I noticed," I said softly. "But I wouldn't miss watching you receive something you never earned." Before he could reply, the host called everyone to their seats. The ceremony began. Speeches, applause, meaningless jokes. Then came the highlight, the Harper family's inspiring story. The same promotional video from the town hall began to play on the projector, except it wasn't exactly the same. At the 1-minute mark, just after my voice said, "Every piece carries your name, son," the footage glitched. Then the screen filled with text. "Trademark owner, Edward Harper, unauthorized use detected." A ripple of confusion swept through the room. Then came the images, screenshots from the public registry Lydia had filed earlier that day. The legal document timestamps, even Ryan's forged loan application with his digital signature highlighted in red. The screen froze on the final frame. Innovation without integrity is just theft in a nicer suit. Gasps, murmurs, the sound of chairs scraping. Ryan stood, shouting for the tech crew. Clara's phone buzzed nonstop. The host tried to recover, stammering about technical difficulties. But it was too late. The silence that followed was heavier than any outburst could have been. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. By morning, every business outlet in the region had the story. Harper Innovations accused of fraudulent ownership transfer. Founder reclaims legacy amid legal scandal. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd become news again, just like before. Only this time, it wasn't as a ghost. Ryan called 12 times. I answered on the 13th. "Dad," he said, voice cracked. "You ruined us." "No," I said, calm as tidewater. "You did that the day you thought I'd trade my name for your comfort?" He started to cry then. Not the tears of guilt, but of a man who finally realized his safety net had been sewn by someone he'd cut loose. When he stopped speaking, I said, "You still have your hands? You can build something new, just not on my wood." And I hung up. Later that evening, I stood outside the workshop for the final time. The Harper Innovations sign was gone, half torn from the storm that had rolled through. Only the old engraving underneath remained faintly visible. Harper and Son. I ran my fingers over it, feeling the carved edges under the chipped paint. Sam pulled up beside me, headlights dimmed. "They're shutting down operations," he said. "The investors pulled out. Clara left town." I nodded slowly. "And Ryan?" "He's still here, trying to sell what's left." "Good," I said. "Let him learn the value of what he sold too soon." I handed Sam a sealed envelope. "Deliver this to the courthouse tomorrow. Lydia will know what to do." He turned it over, curious. "What is it?" "Closure," I said. As he drove off, I looked once more through the window of the darkened shop. The machines were still, dust settling on the saw tables. But there was peace in that stillness, the kind of peace that follows after years of noise. The pocket watch ticked softly in my palm, steady as a heartbeat. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to smile. Not the smile of victory, but of balance restored. Justice doesn't shout. It signs. The courthouse smelled like rain and paper. It always does on mornings when something ends. The letter Sam delivered the day before was already on record when I arrived. Stamped, logged, and filed under Harper versus Harper Innovations, Case 24C1185. The irony wasn't lost on me. A man suing his own blood to reclaim his own name. But this wasn't vengeance. It was correction. Inside, the room buzzed with low murmurs. Reporters lined the back benches. Ryan sat at the defendant's table, his suit immaculate, face pale. Clara wasn't there. She'd left town 3 days earlier, her silence finally useful for once. Across the aisle, Lydia arranged the exhibits, folders, printouts, and a single wooden plaque. Harper & Son Woodworks, established 1979. The same plaque Ryan had boxed up as a retirement gift. I caught his eye as she placed it on the table. He looked away. When the judge entered, the room stood. I didn't. Not out of disrespect, but because I was already standing when he arrived. Steady, waiting. The judge glanced at the file. Mr. Harper, you are petitioning to nullify all transfers made under the name Harper Innovations and to restore your ownership of the Harper trademark and related assets. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And you've submitted evidence of fraud and unauthorized use? Yes, sir. 3 key items. Please present them. Lydia opened folder 3. Exhibit A, she said, holding up the trademark certificate. The original registration, bearing Mr. Harper's signature, and the clause requiring physical possession for any transfer. The judge nodded. And Exhibit B? She set a flash drive on the table. A recording from the Harper Innovations launch event, where proprietary footage belonging to Mr. Harper was used without consent to promote a company under fraudulent ownership. The judge's eyebrow lifted slightly. And Exhibit C? Lydia looked at me. Mr. Harper will present that himself. I walked to the witness stand. The room fell quiet. Even the rain against the tall courthouse windows seemed to pause. I reached into my coat and pulled out Helen's pocket watch. The gold casing caught the morning light. This, I said, was my wife's. She gave it to me when we founded our workshop. Inside, she engraved a message. Silence isn't surrender. For years, I thought she meant patience, but what she meant was preparation. I placed the watch gently on the railing before me. For months, I was silent while my son and his wife took everything I built. They called it modernization. They called it progress. They said they were honoring me while deleting my name from the front door. A murmur spread through the gallery. I continued, voice steady. But silence isn't absence. It's a tool. I kept records. I kept proof. And today, I'm using my voice once. Not to shout, not to punish, but to set the record straight. The judge gestured to continue. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the final document, the letter of legacy. I wrote this for the record, I said. It's the same statement they asked me to write for their award. I think it deserves to be heard properly. The bailiff handed it to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. He nodded. You may read it aloud, Mr. Harper. I unfolded the paper. The words were simple, handwritten, not for performance but for permanence. To whom it may concern, my name is Edward Harper, founder of Harper & Son Woodworks. For 44 years, I believed legacy was something you leave behind. I was wrong. Legacy isn't what you leave. It's what you protect while you're still breathing. Innovation means nothing without integrity. Progress means nothing without respect. And no family business, no matter how modern, can stand on foundations built from lies. My silence has been mistaken for surrender. It was not. It was my way of giving others time to reveal who they truly are. Today, I reclaim not only my name, but the principle it stands for. That craftsmanship, honesty, and family still matter in a world eager to sell them for convenience. If this statement costs me my relationship with my son, so be it. Better an honest silence then a dishonest cheer. Edward Harper, 2023. When I finished, the room was quiet. The judge cleared his throat. "Thank you, Mr. Harper." He turned to Ryan. "Mr. Harper Jr., do you contest the authenticity of these documents or recordings?" Ryan didn't look up. His voice cracked. "No, Your Honor." "Do you contest the claim that your father's property was used without his consent?" "No." "Then I have no reason to delay judgment." He signed the order right there, black ink on white paper. Final as a gravestone and just as heavy. Ownership of the Harper trademark, intellectual property, and all affiliated assets is hereby restored to Edward Harper. Harper Innovations registration is nullified effective immediately. The gavel fell. One sharp strike, like a nail driven straight through the heart of a lie. Reporters whispered, cameras clicked. Ryan sat frozen, staring at his hands as if they were strangers. For the first time, I saw not arrogance, but emptiness, the kind that follows when you finally run out of excuses. As I turned to leave, he whispered, "Dad, please." I stopped but didn't turn around. "You used my silence as your shield," I said softly. "Now it's your mirror." Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of cedar and salt, like the first day Helen and I opened the shop. Lydia caught up with me on the steps. "You did it," she said, smiling. "No," I replied. "The truth did." She handed me the final file copy. "Keep this safe. It's your justice token now." I looked at the embossed seal on the cover. Superior Court of Oregon. It felt heavier than paper, like proof that silence, when used right, leaves an echo that can't be erased. 2 weeks later, I reopened the workshop. Not for business, but for closure. Sam helped me clean the dust, oil the hinges, open the windows. The light came in slanted and gold, touching every tool like a blessing. We rehung the old sign, Harper & Son Woodworks. I left the & Son on purpose, not out of forgiveness, but hope. Because someday, maybe Ryan would walk through that door again, not as a thief of legacy, but as a man willing to rebuild it from scratch. Before locking up, I placed the court order inside a wooden box and set it beside the pocket watch. 2 documents, side by side, the proof of truth and the promise of silence. Then I carved one last piece. A small plaque of oak, polished smooth, the words burned into the grain. Justice doesn't shout, it breathes. I hung it above the doorway, where sunlight could find it every morning. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of tea, watching the ocean darken into slate. The wind carried the smell of sawdust and salt. The watch ticked beside me, marking time not as loss, but as rhythm. The steady pulse of life continuing, of wounds healing where wood once split. Helen used to say, "You can't fix something by hiding the crack. You fill it with gold so everyone can see where it broke and how it was made stronger." I understood that now, because that's what justice really is. Not revenge, but repair. The phone rang once that night. Ryan's number. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because some silences are sacred. When the next morning came, the workshop smelled like home again. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man remembering what he'd lost. I felt like one finally keeping what mattered. The pocket watch ticked. Tick. Tick. Each sound a heartbeat for every quiet man who ever chose truth over noise. Justice had spoken, not loudly, but permanently. It had been 4 months since the court order. The town had gone quiet again, not the heavy kind of quiet that comes from shame, but the easy sort that follows after a storm. People nodded at me differently now, not out of pity, out of respect. I never reopened the workshop for business. Instead, I turned it into something else, a community shed. The doors stayed unlocked most days. Old fishermen came to sand their boat oars. Kids from the high school dropped by to learn how to carve spoons and boxes. Sometimes I caught myself teaching the same lessons I'd once taught Ryan, about patience, about letting the grain guide the blade instead of fighting it. It still made me ache, but it also made me proud. Sam handled most of the heavy work now. He'd grown into a craftsman faster than I expected. "You ever think of putting your name on the sign?" I asked him once. He shook his head. "No, sir. It wouldn't feel right." I smiled. "That's exactly why you deserve to." The plaque above the doorway, "Justice doesn't shout, it breathes," had darkened with age already, rain tracing its letters. Some mornings I'd just stand there, coffee in hand, reading it like scripture. The first time I saw Ryan again was at the farmer's market in late spring. He looked thinner, older, the kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from running out of excuses. He was selling hand-carved furniture under a plain white tent. No logo, no branding. Just his name on a small wooden board. Ryan Harper, craftsman. He didn't see me at first, but when he did, his face froze the way a man's does when every version of his life catches up to him all at once. "Dad," he said quietly. I nodded. "Ryan." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of gulls and chatter filled the space between us. Finally, he gestured toward a rocking chair behind him. "I made that from reclaimed oak. Thought you'd appreciate the joints." I stepped closer, running my hand along the curve of the armrest. The dovetail joints were tight, clean, no glue lines showing. For the first time in years, he'd built something honest. "It's good work," I said. "Strong." He exhaled, relief and regret mixed in one sound. "I've been trying to do it right this time. Just me. No shortcuts." "I can see that." He nodded, eyes on the ground. "I don't expect you to forgive me." I sipped my coffee, watching the sea beyond the stalls. "I already did," I said. "The day you stopped lying." He looked up, startled. "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting," I added. "It's about not carrying your anger any further than it's useful." "I carried mine long enough." He swallowed hard. "I lost everything, Dad." "No," I said gently. "You lost everything that didn't belong to you. What's left? That's yours to rebuild." We stood there in silence for a while. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper, creased at the corners. "I kept this," he said, handing it to me. It was my old note from the workshop wall, the one I'd written years ago. "Measure twice, cut once, speak once, mean it." He'd kept it all this time. I nodded slowly, handing it back. "Keep it. You'll need it more than I do." When I turned to leave, he said quietly, "Dad, do you think there's still room for me there? At the shop?" I paused, looking over my shoulder. "There's always room, Ryan. But it's not a shop anymore. It's a place for people who remember what work used to mean." He nodded, understanding. "Then maybe someday." "Maybe," I said, and walked away. That night I sat on the porch again, the ocean humming in the dark. The pocket watch ticked beside me, steady as always. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't loud either. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or apologies. It arrives like low tide, quiet, certain, inevitable. I thought of Helen, how she'd warned me that family isn't always made of blood. "Sometimes," she'd said, "it's made of whoever shows up when it rains." Sam showed up. The townsfolk did. Even Ryan, in his own broken way, had found the courage to face what he'd done. That was enough. The next morning, Sam found me in the workshop polishing a half-finished chair. "You ever think about teaching full-time?" he asked. I smiled. "I think I already am." He pointed to the old sign over the doorway. "You ever going to change that?" I shook my head. "No. That name doesn't just mean father and son anymore. It means teacher and student, builder and believer, anyone who carries the craft with honesty." He grinned. "Then I guess we're all sons of Harper now." I laughed quietly, the sound strange in my mouth after so long. Maybe we are. That evening, I wrote a short note and pinned it on the wall by the entrance, right under the plaque. It said, "To anyone who enters these doors, leave your ego outside. Bring your patience. Learn from the grain. Justice lives in the work." No one needed to know it was meant for my son. I closed up the workshop as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky turning the color of old oak. When I locked the door, it wasn't to keep anyone out. It was just to mark the end of a day done right. For the first time in years, the silence inside didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. The next morning, I saw Ryan again at the market. He didn't approach me this time, just raised a hand in quiet greeting. I returned the gesture. No words, none needed. That's the thing about forgiveness. It doesn't erase what happened. It just stops letting it own you. That night, before bed, I wound Helen's pocket watch for the first time in months. It clicked back to life, its rhythm softer now, almost tender. Each tick felt less like a reminder of loss and more like a whisper from her. You did what you had to. Now rest. And for once, I listened. Summer came early that year. The mornings smelled of salt and cedar again. The kind of smell that takes you back before pain had a name. The workshop doors stayed open most days now. Not because there was business to do, but because light needed somewhere to land. I spent the first weeks finishing small things. A stool for Marlene at the cafe, a box for the librarian's grandson. I didn't charge anyone. I just built. Building was how I prayed. Ryan started coming by sometimes. Never announced, never stayed long. He'd step inside quietly, sweep a little, oil a hinge, or replace a bulb without saying much. The first time, he left a cup of coffee on my workbench. Black, 2 sugars, just how I like it. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. Sometimes silence means you're still angry, but sometimes it means you're learning how not to be. One afternoon, Sam found me sanding a cedar board near the window. "You know," he said, "Ryan asked me for a job yesterday." I paused, the sandpaper stilling in my hand. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him to talk to you." I smiled faintly. "Then you did the right thing." That evening, Ryan returned. The sun was setting, warm gold spilling through the slats. He stood by the doorway, hands deep in his pockets, like a man unsure if he was allowed to enter his own memory. "I heard you could use help," he said. "Always," I replied. He hesitated. "I don't deserve to be here." "Maybe not," I said. "But neither did I, when my father took me in after I nearly ruined his boat." He blinked, confused. I smiled. "The world doesn't fix itself by keeping score, Ryan. It fixes itself by giving people another chance to do better." For the first time, I saw something in his eyes that had been missing for years. Humility. Not shame. Humility. He walked toward the bench slowly, picked up a piece of oak, and turned it in his hands. "I forgot how alive wood feels," he said softly. "That's because you stopped listening," I told him. He nodded. "I'm listening now." We worked side by side for the rest of the evening. No speeches, no apologies. Just 2 men building something that might never be sold, but would always mean something. A few weeks later, I found a letter tucked under the workshop door. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain. "Dad, I can't undo what I did, but if you'll let me, I want to spend whatever time we have left proving that I learned from it. Thank you for not closing the door on me." I didn't write back. Instead, the next morning, I pinned the letter on the bulletin board right above the workbench. Not as forgiveness displayed, but as proof that repair was possible. Helen used to say, "Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's remembering differently." I think she'd be proud of how I remember now. Not as the man who lost everything, but as the one who finally learned what to keep. One evening, when the tide was low and the gulls were quiet, Ryan and I walked to the docks. The same place where I'd once heard him gamble our future away. The boards creaked beneath our feet, but the air felt light. He looked at the horizon and said, "I never thanked you." "You just did," I said. He nodded, eyes wet but steady. "You were right about silence, you know." "How's that?" "It's not about weakness. It's about giving time a place to work." I smiled. "Your mother would have liked that." We stood there until the sky turned violet, the sea breathing in and out below us. When he left, he didn't say goodbye. He just said, "See you at the shop tomorrow." And for the first time, I believed him. That night, I sat on the porch, pocket watch open, the steady ticking a lullaby I'd come to depend on. I thought about how everything that broke, the company, the trust, the family, hadn't been lost forever. It had just been taken apart so it could be rebuilt stronger. The cracks were still there, of course. You can't uncarve a wound. But like Helen used to tell me, that's where the light gets in. So I left the porch light on. Not for me. For anyone still finding their way back. The ocean whispered below the hill, steady and kind, and somewhere between the sound of the waves and the ticking of the watch, I realized, silence isn't what remains when words run out. It's what begins when truth has finally been spoken. If you've listened this far, thank you. For believing that justice doesn't have to roar, that forgiveness isn't weakness, and that silence, real silence, can heal. And if you believe that too, join me by subscribing. Not for me, but for every story that still needs its quiet ending.